This week, I want to speak about the new Earth and how it's often perceived as if it's somewhere we are eventually arriving at, as though one day we'll wake up and suddenly find ourselves living in a lighter world, free from conflict, free from discomfort, free from struggle and difficulty. But what if that framing is the very thing that keeps us slightly removed from it? What if the new Earth is not somewhere we are going, but something that we are either practicing or postponing today? What if it isn't even new at all? What if it is a return? If the new Earth were not a future event, but a present awareness, how would you know whether you are living it? My interpretation of New Earth is not about creating something new, but a new way of being, one that feels less like innovation and more like restoration, a return to our original essence, before we learn to perform for love, before we learn to suppress to feel safe, and before we learn to chase light while avoiding our shadow. This is about remembering what I call our Edenic blueprint, where presence was natural and emotional expression wasn't feared. And if that's true, then the work isn't about ascending away from humanity. It's about restoring integrity within it. One thing I've observed in spiritual spaces is the emphasis on seeking the light. And while that sounds beautiful, it can quietly become avoidance. If we're always chasing the light, we may unconsciously reject anything that feels heavy, painful, confusing, or unresolved. But life in a human body includes heartbreak, loss, misunderstanding, discomfort. 3D is not disappearing. 3D is the stage. The shift is not to a new location, it's a reorientation. And in my own awakening and stepping forward as a guide, I've often struggled to express myself clearly. Returning to your original blueprint doesn't happen overnight, especially if you've spent years adapting, over-functioning, or navigating distorted relational dynamics. It's a gradual process of refinement and recalibration. It's a shedding of identities of who you learned to be so that who you naturally are can come forward. And I'm still in that refinement myself. There's a difference between carrying wisdom internally and then expressing it clearly. And part of my own restoration has been learning to speak from coherence rather than from conditioning. And so I don't show up here as a performer or a personality. I show up because I've lived something and because expressing that lived wisdom is part of my own return. Not in service to a self-image, but in service to something greater than my own story. And that process requires emotional intelligence, self-honesty, self-reflection, and ongoing inner alignment. And so if this resonates so far, and if you feel like you're in that kind of in-between space between knowing who you are becoming, but still untangling from who you were, then this is really the work that I hold space for. A return to your original essence. And so you're welcome to explore working with me if that feels aligned. So let's return to the 3D, 5D narrative. 3D is the physical plane, form, structure, matter. It's not evil and it's not collapsing. It's simply the density of embodied life. Now, 4D, which isn't spoken about much, is the unseen realm. It's the field of thought and imagination. And this is where repetitive beliefs shape perception. And 5D is not floating away from reality. It is conscious response within reality. Same world, different perception. Unconscious 3D living feels like victimhood. 5D conscious living feels like authorship and awareness. You still experience challenge, but you approach it as a project, not a punishment. And that subtle shift changes your experience of reality. And so if the new earth is here, then what distinguishes it? Well, emotional capacity. The ability to sit with someone in pain without needing to fix them. The ability to sit with your own heartbreak without fleeing from it. Most suffering is not actually the event itself. It's from not being received, from not being held in our depth. And often, when people can't meet us, it isn't because we're too much. It's really because they've never truly sat with themselves. The new earth is not this constant happiness and bliss that we often feel that it is. Joy is actually our natural state, and it returns more quickly and more frequently when we stop fighting what hurts. And its presence is what allows the pain to move. Avoidance simply keeps us looping. And so as we move further into this Aquarian age, which is symbolized by the water bearer, water is emotion, water is feeling, and this becomes critical as technology expands. You won't be able to take words or appearances at face value. Even the most beautiful flower in Eden may be the most poisonous, right? So discernment will not be intellectual alone. It will be felt. And this is why I speak into these topics. Can you feel yourself? Can you sense when something feels off? And can you hold your own depth so that you can hold another's? That is New Earth, or a return to Eden, as I like to call it. So this week's resonance note. This week, notice when discomfort arises, do you lean in gently, or do you try and get away from it as quickly as possible? And when someone shares something vulnerable with you, do you rush in to fix it, or can you simply stay? New Earth begins in these small moments. So perhaps the new Earth isn't constructed out there. Perhaps it's built quietly in here, individually. Each time you choose conscious response over reaction. Each time you sit rather than escape. Each time you allow yourself to be real, not perfect, not permanently high vibe, but present. And presence may be the most revolutionary act available to us now. Have a good week.